Hello, we are live with Philosophy and Fighting. So basically what this is take the lessons that we've learned from martial arts and how do we apply them to our everyday life kind of thing. For the last couple of episodes, I've been it's like a new thing I've been talking about. I talked about women in martial arts and then like self-defense. So today I wanted to cover a topic of why kids should train martial arts. Now, I'm not a child expert. All I can speak of is my own personal experience starting martial arts so very young, and also what I've been doing for the last however many years of teaching kids martial arts. I started really seriously teaching kids martial arts about 10, 11 years ago, but I actually started teaching martial arts to children when I was 16. So I've been doing it for a long time, and I just can see what martial arts does for children beyond the physical and teaching kids self-defense. So for those guys who do not know me, my name is Kristen DeBruycker, and I'm a full-time martial arts instructor here in Northern Virginia area, just outside of DC. I've been doing martial arts since I was 9 years old. I am 34 now, so it's a decent amount of time, and this is what I do, and it's my passion. It's what I'm really, really love. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. So you want to make sure you like, subscribe, and share the video. Hit that thumbs up button because that really helps me out. And if you would like to support the channel, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. We have $1, $5, and $10 a month kind of pledges, and that really helps me out, kind of keep putting out content monthly, especially during the quarantine where I'm not working quite as much as I normally would be. Normally I travel around the country and I teach seminars, do self-defense workshops, private lessons in person, and I'm not doing that right now, so it kind of helps me out a little bit. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and at any time, if you have questions, I will always take questions at the end. So I will just speak to my own thing. I'm the oldest of three. I have two younger brothers, and I love martial arts. I don't know why. I think it's just because I loved Power Rangers, and I just wanted to be Tommy the Green Ranger when I was like 9 years old. I'm like, ha, ha, like karate chop. Like I just wanted to do that. I don't know what, but I also got that cultivated in me because my dad was a huge influence on encouraging me to follow it. Maybe watch Bruce Lee movies. He also made me watch Pumping Iron. Don't ask me that. So I was never kind of daddy's little girl. I was more like daddy's little power lifter. So I kind of got into martial arts because I was kind of a weird kid. Because I was the oldest, I didn't actually relate to people my age. And I have kind of direct brain to mouth, like radical honesty. So I don't usually think before I speak. So as a child, I was very weird. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't relate to people my age. I mostly related to adults. I also had a learning disability and was diagnosed with ADD at the age of 6. I had a learning disability from the beginning all the way until the day I graduated high school. So when I discovered martial arts and I started taking them pretty seriously, I started when I was 9, but I started taking it really seriously when I was 12 in middle school. And that's kind of key, especially for girls, because around 11 to 13, 14 years old is when most girls go through puberty. So you already don't feel at home in your body. The body that you had before has completely changed. And in my case, like I had a very adult female body by like 15. So all of a sudden by 16, I had an adult female body, which is very awkward for me. So I developed tons of self-esteem issues. I had a debilitating social anxiety and a lot of other issues that usually arise in the middle school, high school range for a lot of like preteen and teenage girls. But I was really thankful that my parents put me in martial arts because it was the one thing that I could relate to that was like, I could focus on just this thing. And it gave me the ability to be kind of master of my own destiny. And I was praised more so for what my body could do versus what my body looked like. It also gave me something to focus on and to put my energy towards because I had debilitating social anxiety, terrible self-esteem issues, and it's like all these other things. It really makes it difficult. It really made it difficult for me to kind of relate to the rest of the world. So I had terrible anger that was not filtered or basically went into everything else. So what martial arts did for me as a child, it did a couple of things, especially at the younger ages. Then I'll talk about what it's done for me as far as like later. But for children, especially because I did Tang Sudo and Taekwondo, kind of a blend called Korean karate. I trained here in Purcellville, Virginia, from the age of 12 really seriously until about 19 years old. I took it very, very seriously, became a second-degree black belt under Master Kramer, whose home gym is in Frederick, Maryland, if you guys ever want to check it out. And I did that for such a long time because it was the only place where I felt like I was home and I felt natural and I felt like I was not judged for what I said because I felt like at home there, and I was judged for what I could do with my body on a martial arts scale. So it gave me the ability to focus, it gave me confidence, and it gave me a sense of self-discipline. Like I became a very goal-oriented person because of the belt progression and because I just wanted to be better. It also gave me an intense outlet for my anger. Because I was such a lone child and I was so lonely, I was always so angry at the world. And I'll be completely honest, to this very day, when I have a bad day, it feels really good when you hit something. Still to this day, it feels really awesome. So it's done so much for me, and it kind of helped me become the person I am and made me want to pursue further my martial arts career because it was the only thing that made me feel at home in my body, but also at home in my mind, and take the things that I didn't like about myself and use them to harness it for other things. So the reason I like martial arts for children, let alone from my own experiences, but even when I see kids normally. So when I first got introduced to Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, when I was 16, and Muay Thai, and seeing it for the first time, it's like, oh, I want to do that. I want to take what I have and like bring it to the next level, because it was even more difficult. And I mean, I wish I had like really gone for it, but by the time I get to college, I was like full into Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, and I just never quit. But when I started teaching kids at 16, I noticed that the kids who needed martial arts the most were the kids that weren't athletic, the kids that were socially awkward, the kids that weren't confident, the kids that played themselves small, especially girls, like what I saw, like girls play themselves small. And those are the things that kids really need in today's society. I don't know, a lot of you guys are familiar with the DC metro area, but for those guys who are, will know exactly what I'm talking about. In the DC metro area, it is a very competitive area in everything. So a lot of kids have a lot of external pressure, stress, and anxiety put on them to be great at everything. And what I love about martial arts is there is no grades of martial arts. It's not like, oh, you got a B+ in jiu-jitsu. No, it's either it works or it doesn't. It's right or it's not. That's the thing. There's no like middle. And so what I think martial arts does that's really, really valuable, if I was to make a list, the first one is the obvious one, which is, and I think this is kind of understated for a lot of people. The biggest one, I think, is obviously confidence. Confidence is something that I think we all could use a lot more of, especially when I teach now, and I teach to really young girls. I want them to really, all kids to see there's a possibility for everything. Like nothing is off limits as far as like what you really want if you work hard enough type of thing. So I don't want them to self-limit themselves. They're like, well, I'm not an athletic kid. Doesn't matter. So that's the big one, is the confidence, and like learning that confidence and carrying it with you when you step off the mat and you step off training. That's the big first one. The second one, which I think is really, really important, is teaching kids it's okay to fail. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of kids have tons of external pressure on them to be successful at a very young age, especially in this area, because this is typically where I teach kids. And kids are scared to fail. But failure is how we learn. And so when a kid messes up in martial arts, it's like, oh, that wasn't quite right, but it's not the end of the world. You're still going to eat tonight, and your parents still love you. So it doesn't matter. And so that's why I think it's so important. Especially when I teach kids jiu-jitsu, where you get tapped by kids all the time. They wrestle, they roll, and they lose. And they lose a lot. And that failure teaches them to grow. Because that's really, and I want kids to learn failure at a young age. like ideally like 5 or 6, like the youngest you can, because you don't want the first time you have a great big failure in life to be way older, like college, 30s, like bankruptcy, divorce. Like if that's the first failure in life, you're going to feel really crappy. But if you've had it at a young age, then you know you've kind of built this, into your system, and then you can use that later in life. So we have confidence, we have learning to fail, and then the third one, which I know sounds crazy and it's obvious, but I'm going to dive into it deeper, is respect. Now, I didn't understand it, I don't believe in respect in the traditional sense. I don't think children should blindly respect authority and adults for no reason. I had one person say that to me once, like, well, Kristen, how do we teach the kids to blindly just listen to adult figures no matter what? And I'm like, no, I don't want them to. I want to earn a child's respect. And I do that by respecting them back and treating them more like an adult, like a little adult, and talking to them as if they're like a whole person and not kind of talking down to them. And then I earn that child's respect. And then that teaches them that this is a mutual thing. Okay? There's a trust here with that level of respect. Okay? So, and the reason why I think this is so important is because, so I'm a female instructor. I teach both little girls and little boys. And I always thought of myself as, being a role model for little girls, and that's so important. But I didn't understand until a parent brought it to me, is that you have to understand you actually make a huge difference for young boys too. And I'm like, how so? You're teaching these younger boys to respect women in a completely different way. So I see these young boys that look at me as an authority figure in a completely different capacity than maybe they look at other women. And they will learn to treat women with respect in a completely different way, as like a whole person, and seeing what I also am capable of. So that's like a different type of respect. So that's just another example, but also respectful of each other, and that you don't have to like each other to just be respectful. Because I have a lot of kids, they're not the best friends when they're training, but they have to learn to respect each other because this is my training partner. And if they put me in a choke, I have to trust them to let go when I tap. That's what I'm teaching these children. So that's one that I think is also very important. So we have confidence, we have learning to fail, and then of course we have respect. The next one, which I think is like really important, which I love about martial arts, is natural consequences. I don't like, as a kid's jiu-jitsu instructor, as a kid's martial arts instructor, I do not like telling a kid, you have to do this because I said so. That's arbitrary. Kids a lot of times like reasons. So I really believe in natural consequences. And what I mean by this is like, if you do this, this will happen. And I will tell a child, like a great example, my favorite one to use is for 5-year-olds. I always tell them, first line of self-defense is being aware of your surroundings. And of course, as most 5-year-olds, they just kind of like all over the place. And so if they run into each other, I have to let them. They bang heads, they might cry a little bit, but no one gets hurt. And I'm like, okay, guys, why did that happen? And they're like, because we weren't being aware of our surroundings. I'm like, exactly. So I think there's something to be said about natural consequences. Just like in martial arts, it's like, well, why did this happen? Well, because I didn't do the technique correctly. I'm like, exactly. Like, so when you teach these kids that because of the actions you did, this happens, it gives them a sense of autonomy and natural consequences for their actions. So they basically own their own actions versus going to somebody else, like a parent or someone else, to kind of blame them. I want kids to learn autonomy. Okay, and autonomy is something that's very important to children, I think, these days, especially as they get older. And that's what I love about martial arts, is because it's like a litmus test for life as far as like what you can learn from it. So we had confidence, we had respect, we had natural consequences. I'm missing one. What else did I say? Oh well, I'm sorry guys. I'm like kind of all over the place. But the thing is that I think is the biggest one is I get a lot of parents that come to me, and myself included, who are so concerned about how their child is going to end up as an adult, because maybe they don't learn the same way as all the other kids. Maybe they have ADD, maybe they have ADHD, maybe they're a little socially awkward, maybe they're on the spectrum. And what I tell everybody and parents constantly is, don't worry. I'm almost a completely auditory learner. I learn in a very unique way that did not work well for me in a school system until I got to like college where there's lectures and stuff. But I tell parents all the time that like parents will see like, well, they have a hard time spelling, or they have a hard time reading, or they have a hard time with this, they have a hard time focusing. I'm like, so do I. It's okay. I have a college degree. I have a college degree in philosophy. I graduated from a pretty respectable university in Southern Virginia. And I always want the parents to be like, your job as a parent, but even as a mentor, someone doing martial arts, is not to make these kids great kids. Your job is to make them to be great adults. I did a podcast recently where we talked about our goal as martial arts instructors and leaders is that I want to make this kid like a kid I would hang out with when they're an adult. So I would love, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to cultivate great people. So regardless of whether martial arts teaches you physical fitness, which is obvious, self-defense or anything like that, or gets rid of the kid's energy, all of that is great. But it's the greater lessons that you learn on the mat that I think really turn you into a better person. So I always say, as martial arts instructors, yes, we're here to train people to learn how to defend themselves, but we're also, more importantly, in the business of making better people. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. Is I know that my scope is not super big when I'm just teaching like 15 to 30 kids at a time in a kids jiu-jitsu class, but I feel like I have a very hands-on like scope into like what that kid's life is like. And if I can make even the smallest bit of difference to make their life better when they're an adult, that will make me happy, because I know what it did for me. Like, I would not be the person I am today without finding martial arts. I would have not found the confidence that I have. I would not even have the ability to even talk to you guys here on YouTube Live without like shaking practically, because I used to get so nervous. I couldn't even make eye contact with people when I was a kid. It was really bad. So I've come really far, and I would think that any martial art that you would like to put your child in would really help them, in my opinion. So those are the reasons that I think children should train martial arts. So that's just, my opinion. So what I would like is, this is a great time to kind of break. And I would like to open it up to questions for anyone as far as like kids in martial art, like what's the best martial art to put a kid in, especially like in this really unique time during the COVID-19 and quarantine and safer at home. What I'm doing right now, which is working, I think, well, from some of my clients, is I'm actually doing private lessons with kids on Zoom. And what's really nice about it is that we get a lot of the same effect without me physically being there. So a lot of these kids I already have somewhat of a rapport with, so it's a little easier, but I do like one-on-one lessons, and that kind of helps them really work on their focus, their discipline, their exercise, getting them to move. And we still do like the same type of mat chats and talk about, personality and things like that, and like how to be a good person, how to have self-discipline, how to be respectful at home and things like that, patience, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what I've been doing right now for the kids, now that martial arts is not really okay yet. So that's something that you can do. Another thing you can do is I actually have tons of free Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes for kids on my YouTube channel that are free, that you could do with your child if you would like them to. And that's kind of a great way to kind of get involved in your kids' martial art. And then they kind of are usually more encouraged to do it. So that's another great thing is you can do as well. But what I wanted to do now is just kind of open it up to questions. If there are any questions about kids and martial arts, I know Eric has made a couple comments, so I will read those. Oh, thank you. I didn't know dance was the exact opposite, Eric. But I appreciate you saying that the kids could use me as an instructor. I do love teaching kids. That's like my favorite thing in the world. I love teaching kids more than anything. Maybe. Yeah, especially young kids. Young kids are my favorite because they're hilarious. So if there are no questions, then we can kind of call it a day. But I always like to say thank you guys so much for tuning in on a Sunday to listen to me kind of ramble. This is the closest I get to talking to a lot of people right now. But I just want to let everyone know that I am available for private lessons if that's something that you're interested in on Zoom. I also, if you guys would like to support the channel, I have, you can always become a patron on Patreon, and it's just a monthly subscription or pledge, and you get some access to some free content that's kind of exclusive. And that's pretty much everything. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share the video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in as always. You guys have a wonderful weekend. And remember, fighting is easy. Life is hard.